Okay, but it's going to be repetitive, right? I know. What do you do with this stuff anyway? No, forget. I asked that. I don't want to know. If you need more natural light, that blind can, yeah. Dad, don't come in, they're filming! Okay, so... I'm sure you asked me that 2 years ago, but alright. My earliest memory... I guess I was nearly 4 because I was still in a stroller. I was wearing the ladybug pants. They were these blue overalls with little red ladybugs on them, and my mother always said if a ladybug crawled on your thumb, you should close your eyes and make a wish. Do you really want to hear this? Because, I could be in the park right now with my boyfriend, and I don't think history would suffer any. I must have been hungry waiting in line to get into the supermarket, and when we got inside, my mother left me strapped in the stroller in the cookie aisle while she went to go fetch something, and I managed to undo the safety strap lock and climb out, and I took a packet of cookies. They were Loft House cookies, with the pink icing and sprinkles, and then went on a walk to find my mom. That was the first time I'd gotten myself out of a stroller, and I suppose parents have to learn the hard way when their kid has graduated a level of human intelligence. Okay, so the next thing is my mother screaming and running towards me. I could only see her eyes, obviously, because of the mask, but they were electric. And then she grabbed me in her arms and sobbed and yelled at me, "What did you touch? What did you touch?" And then she ran home with me in her arms all 4 blocks and put me in the bathtub and just scrubbed me. I remember it hurt. I cried. I just remember the fear. Her fear. That must have been around fall 2020 when things started to get bad. Obviously, I survived. The cookie packet incident didn't kill me. About 4 weeks later, she took me in an Uber to the pediatrician because I had a dry cough. Do I have to explain that? Okay, alright, so future historians, there were these doctor booths, in every neighborhood for when the doctor needed to see you actually, not on screen. They brought those in because of the domestic abuse. The bruises weren't showing up on the screens, and women started dying in their homes. The patient was on one side of the clear divider, and the doctor was on the other, and there were these little tunnels so the doctor could feel and touch what he needed to in gloves. And they used the booths for the kids because kids couldn't always communicate their symptoms. Anyway, I didn't have it, but she did. She went to the hospital, but by then folks were lying in corridors and doctors were wearing 10-day-old face masks because the richest country on the planet could produce the plutonium and uranium-235 necessary for nuclear fission. It could put men on the moon and shoot terrorists in Yemen with drones, but it couldn't get it together to make a bunch of face masks. And she had bad lungs, so she died. And so my sister, April, and I were left with Dad, who at that time was a hopeless father. But, he learned. He wanted to be a painter, like oils, but he's a carpenter, practical guy. And when we say, "Shit, Dad, we had to teach you how to parent," he actually agrees. He says once people were so busy commuting and working, they hardly saw their kids. And then during sequester, there was like a kind of collective falling in love. Those folks who saw their children as creatures to be managed began to see humans. And they've done neurological studies. During sequester, there was like a mass rewiring of brain function. the kids taught the adults how to play again. So, hey, kudos to us. So, it's not the reason you take your kid to the pediatrician you have to worry about. It's the trip there. That's like a metaphor or whatever. That the thing you worry most about diverts you from the thing you ought to be worried about. And tonight we'll talk about Mom. And Dad will tell old tales from the trenches because you guys are here reminding us it's the anniversary. He'll remind us again that in those days people just thought it was a shock for people to discover they weren't in control. People thought if you were well off, the world was pretty much yours for the taking and you could do what you wanted, and the world just seemed to accept it. And then out of the blue, the Supreme Commander, who is that god, science, who or whatever is on the bridge steering this planet, just had a stroke or something. And everyone is saying, well, shit, maybe we can't just do what we want. And tonight he'll talk about Mom. And he'll show us the photo of Mom in the blue dress with the little flowers, holding April on the picnic rug, and me with the juice pack and the sun hat looking like I wanted to hit April, and we'll laugh. And then we'll cry. And then April will say, at least you remember her. And you know what? Sorry, but that actually annoys the hell out of me because, if the generations before us hadn't fucked things up so bad, maybe we wouldn't have, or we would have been better prepped. Mom wouldn't have actually freaking died, and you guys wouldn't be here on the anniversary asking me the same questions, and I could right this moment be with Luca in the park listening to Charlie Basie, drinking an illegal beer while my mom tracks me on Find My Phone. Okay, yes, sometimes I just don't want to look backwards. There's hardly a week there isn't some new announcement about the C-19 kids winning all the prizes. Medicine, science, the Pulitzer, and the levels of happiness, and the role of social connectivity. We're special. We don't want to be special. Well, my Aunt Nikki doesn't talk about it with my cousins Dan and Esther. Never. But Dad will. How people were in bars and going to sports stadiums and commuting in crowded trains to almost overnight Bayer cities, and old people crying in empty meat sections of supermarkets. Suddenly, you looked out at a city where a couple of people in the shadow of an empty office building at 12 noon on a workday, like outtakes from the editing floor of a classic disaster movie. Anyone who saw the C-19 photography show at the Met knows what I'm talking about. Those ghostly, bare images of steel and concrete hiding the vital signs inside the walls. When I went to that show, I was amazed. I was alive then. Granddad says he had the same feeling when he saw photos of the Holocaust. I can't believe I was on the planet when that was happening. Dad and April and I went to New York last weekend for a show, and we were walking down Fifth Avenue, taking a right towards Times Square, and this old lady in a fur coat just started screaming in the middle of 43rd Street and telling people to get away from her. It was freaky as hell, but Dad just kind of went up to her and bear hugged her and told her it was over. And he said, "The only thing you can catch tonight is love." I never heard Dad use that word before. For him, the sequester was the first time in his life, or in Grandma and Grandpa's lives, where everything happened to everyone, everywhere at the same time. And money didn't matter the way it had. A lot of people felt good about that. People who had felt luckless all of their lives when they made it through, when billionaires dropped down dead in the street. Okay, so after the sequester came the PLI stuff, and that was all new. Anyone who accidentally mentioned they had PLIs had to hire crisis brand managers and stuff and make public apologies. Kanye and Kim learned that the hard way. Anyone with post-life investments were deemed unable to live present. So all that accumulation then had to do this huge U-turn. After the sequester, it was like, do you need more than one house? Those posters were all over Milwaukee. Everyone was selling off their houses and stocks and shit, trying to outdo everyone with how they just had one modest house, and one car. Remember how Gwyneth Paltrow got trolled when she made this big song and dance on Goop when she downsized from a luxury SUV to some little car, and then they discovered she had like a massive Audi Quattro Tiptronic in her PA's garage in the valley? And then when the Live Present channel put that little clock on the top right corner of the screen, it was amazing, the reaction. Yeah, every day being reminded that time runs out, no matter how much money you have. And the Live Present thing, which seemed cultish and weird to start with, just ironically went viral. Sometimes I get scared that things will go back as fast as they moved forward. I can't imagine what it was like to have Sunday. People going to their own church and shit. It just seems so lame to me. Dad and Mom were big in the church before the sequester. Dad ran the Sunday school and Mom was in charge of the fundraisers and stuff. And then it closed. Like, all of them, except for zealots. Because everyone lost faith. Literally. And then, when Sunday became Thanksgiving Day, and the services were cross-faith, and all the new residential buildings had to include the Live Present spaces, and the Live Present pastors, and new music kicked in, well, it's just way cooler, and more inclusive. Our Thanksgiving space is down near the museum. They got Santiago Calatrava, who designed it, to do it, so it looked right beside it. And it's full all the time. If you walk around town and hear Dua Lipa's anthem Small Things and Springsteen's Grace ringing aloud in the chorus of voices from every culture, it's just... And every week, Dad says without fail, who'da thunk? The atheists would be saying louder than anyone. And last year I talked about turtles, sea turtles, remember? I was obsessed. Well, this year it's birds. Every time I look out the window and I see an ivory-billed woodpecker, Dad just kind of smiles and shakes his head in wonder, and sometimes opens a beer, even if it's 11 a.m. And when they found those breeding grounds for the tiny Kirtland warblers in the new wetlands in Michigan and Wisconsin forests, he literally cried. And my Aunt Nikki said that they saw a California condor on 2 separate occasions in the last month and called Dad both times just to say so. And he's like, Nikki, it's coming back. It's all coming back. And then he wipes away a tear. Grandma says the C-19 psychological depression was the most anticipated non-event in history. She's a therapist. And instead of freaking everybody out, the sequester triggered some deep recognition of aliveness. People wanted to live. I think about that. When Dan came over from San Diego last fall, Dad took us and Grandpa fishing in the new wetlands, and we camped out and ate fish on the fire, and that was so far the best night of my life. Oh, apart from when Luca and I got together. That night I told them I wanted to be a musician, and Granddad said that when my dad told him he wanted to be an artist, he said you couldn't feed a family being creative. But after the sequester, they did that global study that showed arts were crucial to survival. Granddad says that when the Department of Health and NEA merged, Fox News went crazy. And that was the beginning of the end of Fox. So then I said, well, how do you feel that I want to write songs? And he said he was happy I had moved from investment banking and settled on something dependable. Dad just said, you have it so fucking easy, babe. Yeah, I do. I feel American. Probably still American, but live present is not far back. Luca feels much more a part of the live present gen than American, but sometimes he just does that to piss off his parents, I think. They still think America first. They're the type of people who were hard to bring on board when climate change took first place in national security risks. They got it, eventually. Although last Wednesday when I went over to their house for dinner, Luca's dad said how the Japanese need to get back into eating whales because there are too many, and it's crazy out there in the ocean, and whales are having their own versions of road rage. Hey, I'm sorry I was rude before. No, I was. I get it. I do get it. I mean, like, my kids might think we made shit up, so it's important to have, records. I mean, sometimes I wonder what happens if we forget. And the sea turtles get choked up on plastic again, and the warming comes back, and people are assholes and club each other for hand sanitizer. What if we devolve? Things can change fast, right? Yeah. It can all start with a little bat. That's why you do this. To keep records. Yeah, I worry. But then, when I walk to rehearsals for the next gig, Toby's got a home studio in his basement, I walk around the lake, and I see the clear blue sky reflecting in the water, and little kids playing, and the kids build stuff together. And they know they need each other to build something good. I don't know, I get this feeling. It's good. And I think maybe it's not all cyclical. Sometimes it's just moving forward. Sometimes humans just learn to be better. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. Sure. No, take the 43 South all the way. All right, I think I'm going to go to the concert in the park, and I'm going to find Luca, and I'm going to kiss him. Because that's what we do now, right?